Today we're beginning our series on the Sermon on the Mount. One author called this the most significant and profound writing in Matthew. Another author said that if you truly understand the Sermon on the Mount, you'll really understand what Christianity is all about. Now, I have the privilege today of starting us off on an exploration of the Sermon on the Mount, and the first part, the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes present the moral teachings of Christ. Together, the Beatitudes present a new set of ideals that focus on love and humility rather than the power ethic of the time, which was characterized by force and mastery. The Beatitudes echo the highest ideals of Jesus' teaching on spirituality and compassion. Now, I'd love to take each one of these Beatitudes and break them down, because each one by themselves is incredibly rich. But candidly, if I did that, this sermon would be a whole lot longer than anybody wants to sit here and listen to. So what I'm going to try and do is look at the main ideas and how they impact our lives. You know, in the church, we use a lot of powerful words like love, peace, joy, forgiveness, mercy, hope, compassion, and many others. But sadly, many people in our society, even though they know these words, don't really grasp what they mean. And maybe it isn't that they don't know what they mean, it's that they don't know how to internalize them and use them in their own daily lives. How do we embrace in our lives words like peace, joy, love? In high school, my senior English literature class, my teacher, Miss Sanford, made everybody in the class memorize the soliloquy from Shakespeare's Macbeth. Now, I have to admit that at the time, I found this to be not a really enjoyable activity. In fact, I wanted to say hate, but I shouldn't use that word in church. It just wasn't enjoyable. And at the time, Miss Sanford was not my favorite teacher. But you know, having that soliloquy stuck in my mind over the years has caused me to really reflect on what this precious gift of life is all about. For those of you who don't remember your senior English literature class, Macbeth was a tragic figure who, in an effort to satisfy his ambitions, his lust for power, to satisfy his wife and himself, he wanted to seek that power, and he was ruthless and brutal in every way possible to achieve it. But once he had achieved that power, he reflected on how he got it, and he realized that his life was hollow, that his life was meaningless. He realized that life is short, and he had wasted it. He called his life a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. A life that signifies nothing. Henry David Thoreau said, "The mass of men live lives of quiet desperation." Would you say we're a happy society? How many people feel their lives signify nothing, or they're living in quiet desperation? One poll found that 60% of Americans reported that they feel unfulfilled in their careers. In a 2018 poll, Gallup reported that today people are more stressed, worried, sad, and in pain than Gallup had ever seen in their poll. And I should point out that was a 2018 poll. So that statement is pre-COVID. Looking at the numbers, 13% of adults today take antidepressants. But what struck me was 19%, basically 1 in 5 people over age 60 take antidepressants. Now, since I'm just a couple years over 60, I got to admit, that number really hit home to me. But looking at it differently, let's imagine that we're back 2,000 years ago. And you're up on that mountain with Jesus. It's quiet. It's peaceful. It's a relaxing place. It's free of stress. It's just you, 3 other disciples, and Jesus. You're probably sitting on some rocks in front of Jesus. Now, Jesus knows his destiny. So he brings up these 4 disciples onto the mountain, and he sits down with them. And in this very intimate setting, he shares with them and with us how to live a life of love, a life with meaning. Jesus wants us to find joy. He wants us to have an abundant life. He wants us to have a happy life. Yeah, Jesus wants us to have a happy life. Jesus wants you to be happy. As I said, I don't have time to really dig into each one of the nuances of the Beatitudes, but I will look at just the first Beatitude to give you an idea of why I'm going in the kind of offbeat direction that I'm going in. So, verse 3, the first Beatitude. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, do you remember way back at the beginning of the service when we did the call to worship? And we used the words, happy are they? The word blessed comes from the Greek word markios, which means the highest form of happiness and well-being. Blessed, happy. The Beatitudes tell us who are happy in God's sight. So they could have been written, happy are those that. Now, the word poor in this Beatitude does not mean lives in poverty, but it means poor in spirit. Poor in spirit? What? How can you be happy if you're poor in spirit? Well, this poor is a contrast from the Pharisees, who professed that they were rich in the spirit because they knew it all. They were haughty, they were arrogant, thinking they knew everything about God. In reality, they understood very little. And Jesus is saying their arrogance kept them from really knowing and experiencing God. The poor in spirit are humble and know they need to constantly seek God. And in constantly seeking God, Jesus tells them they would have the kingdom of heaven. The Beatitudes reflect the qualities of God. And Jesus is telling us if we live our lives in sync with those qualities, we will find a happiness that is greater than anything we could ever find through seeking wealth or power or going it alone. Jesus doesn't want us to do it my way. It's a little tribute to Frank Sinatra. What I'd like to do now is read the Beatitudes, but with my own twist. Instead of digging into each one, I've taken my study and I've tried to reinterpret them into our language and our time. I've also taken out the second part of each Beatitude, which is God's promise. I'm just going to focus on what we should do to find true happiness. I'm not trying to rewrite a new version of the Bible or anything, but basically, this is what they say to me. Verse 3, happy are people who seek and strive with all their heart to grow in their faith. Happy are those who care for and about others. Happy are those who are humble and not pride-filled. Happy are those who passionately seek and crave to be in a relationship with God. Happy are those who serve others with sympathy and loving kindness. Happy are those who seek with their entire soul a singleness of mind to do God's will. Happy are those who seek to build peace, harmony, and blessing among everyone. Now, verses 10 and 12 go together, so it's a little longer and a little bit more complex. Happy are those who stand firm when they are criticized or attacked for their faith. And happy are people who others say negative things about, because they stand strong in their beliefs. On this last one, we could probably spend a lot of time. I mean, how can you be happy when you're being attacked or criticized for your faith? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pose a question for you to think about. How would you feel if you don't stand up for what you believe in? How would you feel if you didn't stand up and be counted? Again, the Beatitudes presented a new set of ideals that focus on love and humility rather than force, mastery, and power. They echo the highest ideals of Jesus' teaching on spirituality and compassion. St. Augustine said they were a perfect standard for the Christian life. The Beatitudes teach that God's children are those who reflect God's nature, who constantly strive to put others above themselves. The Beatitudes offer us the kingdom of heaven, both today and in the future. The Beatitudes are all promises that we will be comforted, we will be satisfied, we will obtain mercy, we will see God, and we will be called the children of God. Jesus is telling us that achieving righteousness is not just following a series of commandments. It is a total attitude of our mind and of our soul. The Beatitudes tell us how to live a happy life and find joy in every minute, how to be truly alive. In the 2nd century, a church leader in Carthage named Tertullian was defending the Christian church from attack. His most powerful defense was when he said, See how they love one another. See how they love one another. May we all be guided by the Beatitudes in our lives to find that happiness, but also so that others will look at Green Valley United Methodist Church and say, see how they love one another. Amen.